What is the one story you want to tell, that you can never fit into a conversation? A few years ago I was at E3. I turned around a corner and walked into Hulk Hogan, bumping into him. He responded saying, "Pardon me, brother." Then we parted ways. I might have met Christopher Walken while working at a fast food restaurant. This guy walks in, that looks really familiar. I thought that maybe he came in a few days ago or something and that's why he looked familiar. I take his order and I ask for a name to put on the order. He chuckles and says Chris. Why did he chuckle? I didn't know at the time. It wasn't until a few days later where it hit me that the guy looked like Christopher Walken. He said his name was Chris, and the reason he chuckled was probably because I didn't realize he was Christopher Walken. Nobody cares about mountain biking, but I had a fantastic crash where I fell off a cliff and landed in a shallow frigid river, and when I got up I realized I had landed on my bike and the pedal had punctured my ass cheek. I walked in the river 2 kilometers back to the car, pushing my busted bike. The key fob was pooched from the water, so I had to use the key, but hands were too cold to work, so I started the car and drove with my elbows. Cell phone was wet, so I drove to the ranger station. Ranger station was closed for the season, so I tried my cell. Hands were so cold I used my tongue. It worked, but no reception. Kept driving, bleeding all over my car until I got to a gas station and had them call me an ambulance. The medic wondered why I loaded my bike into the car before getting help. Edit. Considering everyone I know has avoided my biking stories for decades, I am very surprised I got gold. Thank you. One time I walked into a Home Depot and an employee there said, "Hello," and I just went, "Thanks." We looked at each other for a second or two and then he said, "You wanna try again?" And I just kind of chuckled and scurried off. This haunts my every waking moment. I helped a little girl who got separated from her mother in a mall. Mom got on the escalator going down, with a stroller and their coats and bags, and the girl was scared of the escalator, so she steps back and is now at the top while Mom is at the bottom and everyone's nervous. There are people behind me piling up, but I ignore them. I put out my hand, point to Mom, who we can see, and say we'll go down together. The girl won't speak any words and is clearly frightened but takes my hand. I say, "Okay, ready? 1.2. 3 inches and step onto the escalator, but she doesn't move and I have to hop backward. I try one more time. No luck. I crouch down and ask, "Is it okay if I pick you up?" And she nods yes, so I repeat yet again, "Okay, I'm picking you up, I'll take you to your mom, okay?" The whole time I'm reminding her that mommy is right there and we're going to go to mommy. When I stood up to carry the girl down I heard a group of teenage girls let out a collective "Aw." At the bottom I pass her off to Mom and kept on my way. As a single 35-year-old guy, the story is absolute gold with women, but there's never any reason to bring it up. I got done with my bartending shift in a college town over a summer, and headed over to my friend's house for after bar. Everything in this town was walking distance, and since it was summer it was fairly quiet night at around 4 a.m. as I'm walking home from the after bar by myself. Suddenly, a couple of guys come up behind me, completely wasted riding a tandem bike. These guys were barely keeping this thing on the street, when a car drove by, slowed down, and a girl from the back window of the car leans out and flashes her tits at them. They guys crashed their tandem bike into a curb in a fantastically comical way, and the car sped off. I miss small college town life. In 3rd grade there was a girl I used to hang out with. She had a weird laugh. It sounded like a horse's neigh. One day she was very happy about something and kissed me. After that whenever I laughed it sounded like a neigh too. I ended up going to another school after that and lost that laugh. The curse of the horse woman lives on. I live in Maine in the same town as Stephen King. I have worked at several stores when I was younger such as Home Depot and Walmart. He has come in sometimes. He recognized me when I worked at Home Depot from Walmart and said, "You really need to stop following me." Jokingly, of course. He was a pretty cool dude. Bought some screws and lumber. I used to deliver pizzas. I roll up to this one house, waltz to the door, have a knock and start waiting, when this cicada starts dive bombing me, kamikaze style, with rage. Like I could almost hear it screaming at me. This went on for the several minutes that my customer wasn't answering the door, and then the cicada conveniently flew away right as the door popped open. So I'm sitting there stressed, kind of in shock with a pizza in my hand, and tell the customer what happened for some reason. They don't care. Whatever. I walk back to my car, get in, the cicada is in my car. Attacks me again. One of the most surreal exchanges with nature I've yet encountered. One summer, my mother found a baby seagull. My sister and I then raised that seagull the entire summer, and we ended up bonding with him. We could pet him, he would sleep on our lap, and he started to steal our dog's squeaky toys. He also got attacked by a cat once, but survived relatively unscathed. He learned to fly after 8 weeks or so my mom then put him out into the wild, next to her workplace. He would frequently meet up with us and snuggle a bit. My mom would feed him some raw shrimps as well. When winter came, he disappeared and we never met him again. What a weird summer that was. Edit, thanks for the silver, stranger. Here is a picture of the little guy, the last one I took of him. Edit 2, whoa, thanks for the gold. My first one. You guys are a good bunch of people, and I enjoy reading the answers below. I wish I had time to reply to everyone. If Disney taught me anything, one day you will have your life saved by a flock of seagulls. Be ready to film at all times. I had breakfast with James Earl Jones, then went into preschool and told my teacher that I had breakfast with Darth Vader. She didn't believe me until an article in the paper came out the following week about him being in town. When I was a kid I had this awesome Supersonics hoodie. It was my favorite piece of clothing I owned and I wore it all the time. One Halloween, we were lighting off some fireworks. One kid shot a Roman candle at a light post and it bounced off, came right back down and landed in my hoodie pocket. Burnt a hole right damn through the whole thing. I looked for a new one but at that point the Sonics were gone. For those that don't know, Sonics were a Seattle NBA team that the douchebag Howard Schultz sold to out-of-towners for no reason. Fast forward many years and I'm walking through a shopping outlet and see my old hoodie. I buy it on the spot, of course. It felt like being reunited with an old friend. A little while later I'm out for a jog in the hoodie, and while running on a path a protruded tree branch sticking out catches my hoodie pocket and rips it straight through. Same exact pocket and even on the same exact side. I just don't even know. Went back to the outlet and of course the shop has shut down permanently. I got my sister to sew it up, but it doesn't have the same clean look it used to. This is some Final Destination shit. That pocket was never meant to live. I won a Nintendo Switch in a cereal box. The problem with telling the story is that it's not interesting enough to fill in the details once I've explained the ending. I'm gonna do it anyway, though. I had gotten Honey Bunches of Oats, my favorite cereal, and I was eating it for breakfast in my dorm. I had woken up earlier than usual, so I had a decent amount of time before my first class. I had just finished the box and I was gonna go recycle it, but I saw there was this promotion on it that you could win one of 500 prize pack containing a Nintendo Switch and Super Mario Odyssey. I just kind of had a moment where I was like, fuck it, I got time. I plug all the information into the website, and the screen shows a Mario question block and the instructions to click on the question block a few times. If a mushroom popped out of it, then you were a winner. So I click a few times, coins pop out of the top, and then all of a sudden this mushroom slowly rises from the top of the block. I was in total disbelief, and I was like, nah, I probably misunderstood the directions. But nope, I had just won a Nintendo Switch and Super Mario Odyssey. Literally everyone I told about it was just like, huh, I always thought those were scams, I didn't realize people actually won those. It's been pretty good. I would never have been able to afford a Switch otherwise, so that's definitely a plus in my book. Once my wife and I were on one of those supermarket ramps that move like escalators, don't know the right word, and an employee was pushing empty carts in front of us. We were a few steps back and the genius decided to ride in front of the carts. God knows why, 2 or 3 carts got loose and came rolling towards me and my wife, so I promptly jumped in front of her, saving her face from being hit by shopping carts. I never tell this story because it would look like I'm bragging, and she never tells this story because she's ungrateful. Upvote for the snide jab at the wife. One time my girlfriend had our dog at the park while I was at work. She called me frantically saying the dog ran off, said the poor pup got spooked by a cyclist and bolted. This dog was very well behaved and obedient, and had never done this before. We eventually find her a couple miles away, in the front yard of the house I first lived in with the dog. Neither I nor the dog had been to that house in years, yet she somehow found her way straight there over all that distance, after all that time. Dogs are incredible. One time I was on the bus toward the back but in front of the second door in the back. As we're going down the road I notice the guy in the seat crossed the aisle is sitting there jerking off. I mean, the whole thing was out and he was going to town. There was a mom and her kids 2 seats in the front sideways facing seats and I'm pretty sure he was looking at the kids. Just as I notice the bus pulls up to a stop and the mom and her kids who were probably around 7 to 5 years range, get up to exit out the back doors. I bolt to my feet and block their way down the aisle and yell, "You need to go out the front door." The poor mom looks at me and starts to protest but I just make myself big to block their way and start herding them to the front door. As she was exiting the bus I tried to quietly tell her what was going on but she was pretty mad at me and didn't let me get close enough to say anything. I think about this often. I was probably their villain of the day and I actually might have saved them from real harm. I posted this once before but how I accidentally pissed off the crows. Oh god, it's a long story. It started when these 4 boys around 10 or 11 would walk past my house every week to go swimming, and every week 4 weeks in a row outside my house the same kid got shat on by a massive crow. Obviously we found this really funny and didn't make the connection at the time he must have done something to piss the crow off. I was putting bird food out in my garden but I was getting loads of feral pigeons so I was trying to shoo them away which this crazy crow must have taken offense to. Soon after I noticed that I was getting caught at by crows all the time. No matter where I went there was angry crows cawing at me. That's when I googled crows and saw that they can hold grudges, recognize people, tell other crows about bad people. So I tried to make a peace offering by throwing food on my shed roof. My kitchen window, with the sink in front of it, overlooks the shed roof. After throwing food out I stood by the window doing the dishes. This must have also pissed this crow off. Later that day a crow started absolutely screeching and cawing. I went through to the kitchen to see what was going on when a huge bird shit landed on my window. In 20 years there has been no bird shit on that window because there is a big ledge above it. So this crow must have hung its butt over the ledge just to do that. I went to bed that night only to be woken up at 5 a.m. by screaming right outside my bedroom window. I live on the first floor so it couldn't have been a human. I googled crows screaming and sure enough that was the noise I heard. It had chosen the only window with a light on to do that. Later on that day there was a big crow sitting on a tree near that window. If anyone else went to the window it just stayed still but if it saw me it started bouncing on the branch, like it thought it was funny. Obviously after the shitting and screaming I wasn't going to give it any food that day. I did give it food the next day and it must have taken the hint because it never shat on my windows or woke me up by screaming again. However, for about a year and a half, every crow for a mile radius round my house would angrily caw at me. Don't piss off the crows. When I was maybe 12 to 13 my parents found a USB drive. Not knowing what to do with it they gave it to me. Curious I put it in my laptop and see it full of data, 15/16 GB. All the files were military profiles of individuals in the army, some PowerPoint slides of research. Some of these profiles had social security address ranks and where they were stationed at. Somewhere still in Iraq. I removed the USB thinking they can be tracking this. I asked my dad where he found this. He said it was on the train stop in the airport. Still have it never plugged it in unless I was at my high school or university to see what other stuff it had. Edit, going to find it and destroy it. While sometimes finding a random flash drive is interesting, like your story, in general you shouldn't plug in one that you find. Hackers, spyware, malware, etc. are all things that only need you to plug the drive in to take hold of your computer. People will intentionally leave flash drives around in hopes that some unsuspecting person will plug it in. Many offices even have policies against using flash drives of unknown origin. Source: husband is a software engineer. Someone royally screwed up and likely lost their job over this. A shame your dad didn't try to reach out and return it. Must have caused a lot of stress and headache. That said, there's a lot of money to be had with such valuable data. Shitty life pro tip. Edit. Illegal pro tips. Unethical life pro tip. I work construction and one time a small Wells Fargo bank in a mall did some remodeling overnight and threw their trash in my dumpster. As I was going through it, I came across VCR tapes that said top secret proprietary information. I took them to the bank manager as I was hollering at her about filling my dumpster. When I handed them to her, she turned white. I figure they were confidential customer information. I get what you were mad, those dumpsters are not cheap and they fill up very quickly. Flat roofer. About $600. I told her to empty it or I'd call the police. Yeah man. It got to the point my boss created his own dump company and sells dumpsters $200 cheaper than the other competitor, lol. I would have done the same thing in your situation. My girlfriend and I were at 7-Eleven and Dog the Bounty Hunter was there. My girl drives a smart car, which is adorable in its own right, but as we came out of 7-Eleven to leave, Dog held the door for us, and then when we were getting in the car he said, "That's one cute car." My girlfriend had no idea who Dog was until I told her, then she couldn't stop giggling that one of the most aggressive bounty hunters out there thought her car was cute. In 2011 I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. It was 4 days before my 17th birthday. When I got home from the hospital that day, I wanted to put myself in a better mood, so I watched Rush Hour, and then I watched Rush Hour 2, and then Rush Hour 3. Fast forward to a couple months ago, I volunteered at a high-profile event that had a shit-ton of celebrities. We weren't allowed to fraternize with the celebs and ask for pictures and autographs and stuff, but there was one celeb that I needed to slightly break that rule for. At the end of the event, I made sure to be near the exit and wait there for Detective James Carter himself. I approached him, I shook his hand and walked him out while explaining to him that Rush Hour got me through one of the worst days of my life so far, and it made me smile during a time that I had no business smiling in. He stopped dead in his tracks, looked at me and thanked me for telling him. He then gave me a hug before sincerely wishing the best for me and leaving the event. And that's what happened when I met Chris Tucker. One time I hit a curb driving out of a parking lot. I know it was a curb because I hit that curb 1/3 times I'm in that terribly designed parking lot, and it made a loud enough noise that some family walking into the building thought I hit another car and were like taking photos of me and looking around for the car they thought I damaged. I met the bassist from Tool once. Super nice guy. The whole experience was great, until I went home and told my family. Me, hey guys, I think I met someone famous today. Do you know the band Tool? Family, no way you met someone from Tool? Who? What did you say? Me. I asked him if his band was pretty popular. They mock me to this day. When I was about 8 years old, I was playing outside with a friend and her little brother 2 or 3 years. My friend was slowly riding my bike on the sidewalk and I was walking besides her, but her brother insisted on riding his tricycle on the middle of the road. It was a dead end without movement. There's a funeral home nearby that often left their hearse parked on that street. Little guy was right behind the hearse when it suddenly starts moving backwards. I quickly pulled him out of his tricycle as he was about to get ran over. It still creeps me out how the kid could have died that day by the same hearse that would have taken him to his funeral. Sometimes I see him on the street and wonder if he remembers he almost died that day. Edit, typo. Probably would have got a discount though. One time me and my brother were being signed up by my parents to do a Rugrats Campbell Soup commercial. My parents were both in chairs in front of this desk talking to a man. And I was sitting leaning against the wall by the door behind them. Then a hand comes through the door and clamps around my mouth and I get dragged out of the room. He's dragging me down the hall and I'm trying to kick and scream, but he's this 6'2" white guy with a long beard and I can't budge or make a noise past his hand. Then halfway down the hallway in the lobby the receptionist looks up at us and he lets me go. I run back to the room and sit on the floor between my parents' chairs. The guy comes in again and whispers something to the man my parents are talking to and leaves. It still makes me angry today because when I told them this story they didn't believe me. I was 5. I am 27 now and now they believe me. It was so traumatizing I still remember it. Thanks for watching our video. If you like it, please smash the subscribe and like button to support the channel, so that we can create more quality content in the future.